Imagine if your life, your destiny, your well-being, even your thoughts were predetermined before you were born just because your ancestors spent centuries living by the obsessive need to maintain a pure bloodline. Royal families all over the world made a horrifying exchange: genetic risk, political influence, and the outcome was ineffective minds, dysfunctional bodies, and family trees contorted beyond belief. We are now going to gather the tearful, unbelievable, and occasionally genuinely creepy accounts of the women who were the most inbred in history. And trust me, by the time we get to number 1, you will be shocked. In our first case, ranked 10th, is Isabella II of Spain, an infamously tragic monarch who ruled from 1833 to 1868, although she was born in 1830. Her life was spent not in extravagant luxury, but rather as a consequence, potentially, of generations of intermarriage. Isabella's birth as a daughter surprised many. It was commonly known that her father desperately wanted a male heir. However, it is safe to say that the initial joy of Isabella's birth faded as quickly as she drew her first breath. Isabella's health and the health of her sister raised quiet concerns from the beginning. It is not surprising, considering she was born of a union that is documented to be between an uncle and his niece. It becomes even more complicated. Her grandparents were also her great-grandparents on one side. It is truly a labyrinth of family. At the tender age of 16, Isabella was married to her double-second cousin, with whom she had 11 children. However, only 5 survived beyond infancy. Here's where it becomes more complicated. Many historians have suggested that her husband was unlikely to have fathered any of the children who survived infancy, and their marriage was undoubtedly less than endorsed. Many historians cite personal issues, her husband's family history, and possibly more sociologically, but there can be no denying that Isabella sometime lost her crown to all of the genetic entrapments within her family. 9th on our list is Louise of Austria, from one of the most interconnected dynasties in Europe. Her parents were both double first cousins, since they had both sets of grandparents in a family where cousin marriages were the rule more than the exception. There was a lot of tragedy. Only 7 of their 12 children lived. The inbreeding present in her lineage is shocking. Genetically speaking, Louise had only 4 unique great-grandparents, which is half of the expected amount. That is, the kind of genetic compression that scientists today... At number 8, we go from royal palaces to the harsh reality of a small American town. Lorraine Whitaker's story is a haunting reminder that the legacy of extreme inbreeding is no longer ancient history. It's echoing in present day. The Whitaker family gained some notoriety through a popular documentary as a case study on the effects of generations of isolation and intermarriage without societal checks. Lorraine is a disturbing part of the story, as she is already categorized as one of the most inbred people recorded in recent history. She is also the mother of Timmy Whitaker, who is still considered to be potentially the most impacted living human genetically. Their story is disturbing not for shock value, but as a reminder that this isn't just royal history. It is a human experience that continues to play out in hidden places around the world. Coming in at number 7, Maria V of Portugal, sometimes known as Maria the Pious, while others would say Maria the Troubled fits better, was born in 1734 into mounting mental anguish and a royal lineage of unions far too close for comfort. Maria's parents, King Joseph V of Portugal and Maria Anna of Spain, were the 16th of the Iberian royal couples intermarried and not finished. Under enormous pressure to continue this tradition, Maria married her uncle. The results were tragic, as they were predictable. Half of Maria's children perished. Genetic complications surely played a significant role in the outcomes. Over time, Maria's mental state reached a point where she was ruled unfit to serve as queen. This is a tale of royalty undone, not through war or rebellion, but because of the invisible cost of genetic recurrence. At number 6, we come to the tragic story of Louise Elizabeth d'Orléans, a woman whose life reads like a Gothic novel written in blood and sadness. Born into a dysfunctional royal union, her father had to marry his cousin, a bastard child of King Louis XIV. As the firstborn and only remaining child of that marriage, Marie-Louise had little choice of what was to become of her life. A nightmare of royal turns, only to be married off again to her cousin Prince Charles of Berry. The results? 3 children, none of whom survived childhood. Whether it was simply due to the fact of inbreeding or curse of circumstance, history can't tell us with certainty. What we know is that Marie-Louise did come to alcohol at a shockingly early age. Reports suggest she was drinking by 14. Was it a reaching out for help, or merely coping with the heavy burden she was required to bear? Either way, her legacy is a tragic story of dynastic duty gone horribly awry.
To sum up, we have number 5, a less-known but deeply interesting royal person, Princess Alexia of Greece, born in 1965. Her particulars collar the ending of royal families and the remnants of aristocratic inbreeding. She and her 4 siblings came from one of the last major royal unions between a sitting king and a princess of royal blood. Nonetheless, there was more to this royal union than simply sentimental headlines. Nevertheless, in this union were not relatives once, but twice at second cousins and third cousins, creating a double tie that held both political and personal significance, and their family trees were heavy and knotted. Constantine's great-grandparents were siblings. One of his grandmothers was also his great-grandfather's sister. Anne-Marie's genealogy also had its own tangled messiness. Therefore, even though their marriage seemed hale and hearty, their genetic closeness meant their children, especially Alexia, were partly inbred. Similar to the famously related British royals, Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip, modern royal story, with stain of an old tradition that's now full circle. The 4th spot is held by someone whose name hardly comes up despite her staggering genetic legacy, Maria Antonia of Austria, a Habsburg that surpassed even her notorious uncle, Charles II of Spain, when it came to inbreeding. While Charles is often pointed to as the ultimate example of the Habsburg genetic failure, Maria Antonia's own family tree makes his look simple. Maria Antonia's ancestry was not so much a tree, but more of a densely looping vine, filled with tangled repeated names and repeated marriages. Some have gone as far as to say it was a genetic circle and not a lineage. The inbreeding extent was so horrible that her own genetic similarity was that of a child born to 2 full siblings, and we don't even know her name. And her story is often overlooked. History may have forgotten her name, but at least genetically she was at the absolute top for Habsburg inbreeding. Quiet, but unforgettable. In a story this long and complex, going way back in time, number 3 is 2 even more mysterious names, not by name but number, Mummies 317A and 317B. While they never ruled, their small, entombed figures bring a story of ancient sorrow and genetic consequence. These 2 infant girls were possibly stillborn, daughters of the one and only Pharaoh Tutankhamun and his wife Ennesen, born around 1300 BCE. But there's a haunting twist. Ankhesemun was not only Tutankhamun's queen, she was also his half-sister, sharing the same father, carrying on a long tradition of sibling marriage practices, part of Egypt's royal family. Tutankhamun himself was the product of generations of tightly constrained bloodlines, and by the time their daughters were conceived, the genetic danger had reached its catastrophic potential. Their brief lives, marked by deformity and debility, serve as a chilling reminder that even divine kings could not escape the cruel arithmetic of inbreeding.
Next up, number 2, moving from pharaohs and palaces to modern world. Deeply disturbing case, Kimberly Cult. Not a royal story, but with some of the worst aftermaths of uncontrolled multi-generational inbreeding in recent history. A history that comes from Australia, where Kimberly's family, identified publicly under a pseudonym, was involved in one of the most shocking legal and genetic revelations of the early 2000s. Living in extreme isolation, the Cult family practiced multi-generational inbreeding, creating a closed-loop community with virtually no source of genetic diversity. When the situation was eventually revealed to authorities, they stepped forward, uncovering a disturbing and layered situation that led to a number of police investigations and subsequent arrests. Kimberly, born into this situation, is extremely genetically compromised. Many people argue one of the most genetically compromised individuals in the world. Her case is not about royal pressure or dynastic pride, just a contemporary example of how isolation and an absence of oversight can produce a horrific human experience. And now, on to our number 1, Cleopatra II. Cleopatra is the woman who, more than anyone else, represented the full strength of careful inbreeding for political gain. Forget the romanticized version of Cleopatra so many movies present. This Cleopatra was not a figment of fantasy. Actually, Cleopatra was the very personification of dynastic commitment. Despite the ethnic identity of Egyptian by rule, her blood lineage was Greek-Macedonian, denoting descent from the Ptolemaic dynasty, who engaged in relentless brother and uncle-niece marriages to keep power centralized and pure. Cleopatra II's parents were siblings. Her grandparents were siblings, and her siblings also had marriages with one another before her unattached rule. A veritable statue of blood sentinels, powerful, but carrying heavy weights. Her name was borrowed from a rarely used name of a princess from Syria, and she was one of the very few external elements to ever be existed in its tree. Cleopatra II was not only a monarch, she was one of many generations of tightly woven genealogy and a monarch whose body embodied the calculated ambitions of a family. Their lives have taken many forms through the majesty of their courts and the quiet isolation of their villages, the gleaming crowns worn, and the extraordinary power sought. The stories of these women have been twisted through the pursuit of purity, power, and legacy into stories of tragedy, perseverance, and enlightenment. Their lives show us how history is not just shaped by politics or war, but also by the unknown influences of biology and blood.